All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our session. This session is on bridging data gaps for citizen science data citizen science for people and policy. This session was put together by a group of collaborators that are part of this task group. It's one of the CODATA task groups on citizen-generated data for the SDGs, for the Sustainable Development Goals. And so we're going to be joined by a number of presenters online today. We have an international panel for you here today. So we have members that are coming from the United Nations United Nations Statistics Division, part of the Collaborative of Citizen Data, Sustainable Development Solutions Network, different universities and partnerships from University of Lagos and Cornell and different parts of Latin America, and then also collaborators from the UK, from UCL and Glasgow, and then myself, who's based in the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and I'm co-chair with Professor Elias, who is also listed there, and we're supported very strongly by Adenike up in the corner there at the University of Glasgow. So you're going to be hearing an assortment of different presentations today about some of the work that we've done over the last few years. And the motivations behind this work is really based on this understanding of communities being in this unique position to provide local data on global challenges. And so from the literature and from a lot of work of our collaborators and colleagues, we see that citizens can contribute high quality data, and that this practice can help include this inclusion within official monitoring and within activities at the local, national, and global levels can play a really important role of bringing in these local perspectives, bringing in citizen needs and concerns, and help us to build a better society that's more inclusive, resilient, and connected to science. And so we see this as an important piece of helping to bridge between global policy and local levels, and helping to incorporate that data. So some of the activities that our group has been involved in have been promoting these citizen-generated data projects in relationship to global challenges through different partnerships. Two of the core things that we've been involved with over the last 2 years is the active support for the United Nations Statistics Division's Copenhagen Framework, which you're going to be hearing extensively about in a presentation soon. And the use of this, how it's been now implemented within countries, within policy, I think is a really critical movement in the field. And we also have had engagement with the Citizen Science Global Partnership, and recently hosted a webinar in June through CODATA and our partners on integrating citizen science data into official statistics for air quality monitoring. We believe that air quality is a really important aspect to be considering, and there's so many factors that affect human health, and it's really a global issue. And so that's been one of our priorities, and one that we hope to continue to prioritize over the next few years. We are working on a report on citizen-generated data across different regions, and really trying to understand how regions might be facing similar issues or facing similar challenges, and thinking about opportunities for partnerships, opportunities to share best practices. And we'll be giving you some examples from 4 different regions during this session about some of these citizen-generated data and how they're being used and how they're helping to make progress on the SDGs. And some of this is related to this idea of sharing effective practices. So what are effective practices that we can use to better incorporate, better add meaning to the data that's coming from citizens? So I will pass this over now to Hao Yi if you're online.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Should I start?
Yes. We could put it as the slides, though. Sorry, one second. Yes, we're good now.
I think it's there already, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Carola. Thank you for inviting us to the session, and great to be. Sorry I couldn't join, but very great to be here. Can you go to the next slide? So I am going to talk about the Copenhagen Framework on Citizen Data and what it's about and why we're doing this. So largely, did I miss the slide? Yeah, okay. Largely, so we started working on citizen data because the citizen contributions to data are extremely important, and they are getting more and more important, being more recognized for societal well-being and their impact. So here we listed a number of impacts: empowering, for example, empowering communities in their dialogue with public institutions about really respecting marginalized voices, giving citizens the agent to really for data protection and also to have a say on how their data being used. Holding institutions accountable and then ensure that data are relevant, impactful, only when citizens are being engaged. So this is largely linked to the 2030 agenda, especially our pledge on leave no one behind. Next slide, please. So we have talked about what is citizen data here. Covered by the Copenhagen framework, we talk about citizen data that citizens are meaningfully engaged in the production and use of data. Citizens, of course, can contribute to many aspects in terms of data. If you think about data collection through censuses and surveys, all of us could be one of the respondents to this data collection. So we do help respond to the surveys and census and official data collection. But for the citizen data or citizen-generated data that aren't covered by the Copenhagen framework, we are talking about data that are produced usually outside of official statistics. And those data can be integrated into official statistics, or they don't have to be, but their data, their quality are being assured and they complement official statistics, or some other citizen data they would like to be left alone, independent, completely outside of official statistics circle. Next slide. So this is something that we had talked about. Maybe if I can go to the next slide, Harry. Yes, so this is linked to what I had mentioned earlier about really giving voice to individuals and citizens, especially those that are often missing, invisible in official statistics. We're talking about building trust and then really connect citizens with policy making. So we hope that lived experience of citizens and they can really help us advance in terms of fairness, inclusiveness, openness, and accountability and transparency. Next slide. There have been a lot of challenges. And so we, from UN, we started working with citizen data 3 years ago, almost exact 3 years ago, and we started in Bangkok, 2022. And until now, we still have lots of challenges. And there were lack of trust, engagement between the state and non-state actors. We're talking about state is national statistical offices or other government line ministries, and then CSO, civil society organizations that are non-state actors. And there have been a lot of questions and concerns over quality of data collected by civil society organizations, by non-state actors. Often a lot of data from CSOs are qualitative data that are unfamiliar to official statisticians. So there have been a lot of discussion on data quality. And of course, it could be limited knowledge and capacities of different actors. Sometimes it's not just about civil society organizations having limited knowledge over a certain aspect of data, but if we talk about official statisticians, they're often not very familiar or in qualitative data that social scientists or CSOs are often collecting. And of course, concerns over sustainability that has been there, given that the funding for citizen science or citizen data initiatives has been very challenging because they're not often funded by the government, so there are no strong backing in terms of funding. Next slide. So why do we do the framework? When we started discussion 3 years ago, and we quickly realized that we really don't have a common understanding what citizen data is. So let's talk about what citizen data give us a frame, and then we can start working together. So the framework really helps us conceptualize and define citizen data, and then also talk about the roles of citizens, civil society organizations, and national statistics offices they can play. And then we really hope this framework can help us formulate action points for sustainable production and use of citizen data. Next slide, please. We really hope with the framework, there's some positive transformation to make the data and the use of data production and use become more inclusive. And we even hope this is not just about citizen data produced by civil society organizations, communities, but also about official statistics. Can we make official statistics more inclusive? Of course, raise awareness about the importance of meaningful and sufficient participation of citizens. We focus a lot on this in the framework. Encourage responsible production and use of citizen data, guided by citizen data principles. And then we have a section on the role of NSOs. They have a big role to play, being the gatekeeper of official statistics, being some organization that are quite experienced working with data. So, and then they often position themselves as steward of the national data ecosystem that citizen data should be part of it. Of course, we would like to contribute to integrate citizens' perspective in a broader discussion within the national data ecosystem. Here we talk a lot about digital transformation, AI, and data governance. How can citizens and communities contribute to this conversation? Make sure their voice is not being lost. Next slide, please. So the development of framework, as I said 3 years ago, we started the conversation in Bangkok. And then we launched the collaborative in April 2023 and September 2023, and our second expert group meeting, and that was where the Copenhagen framework was born. March this year, 2025, the Commission, UN Statistical Commission, when all the chief statisticians of national statistical offices meet, the framework was endorsed, and in 1 month we're going to go back to Bangkok again to have our fourth expert group meeting in Bangkok. Next slide. So here, as mentioned, the citizen data, the Copenhagen framework is the second block, the bottom ones. We're not talking about official statistics. Although we do hope the framework can help making the official statistics more inclusive, and that is happening in some countries. Next slide, please. So what's included in the framework? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. Yes, the concept and definition, the principles, we have 13 principles, and we borrowed largely from the citizen science principles, and of course with other set of principles as well. We talk about the role of national statistics offices and what is the enabling environment for sustainable coordination, production, and use of the citizen data. And lastly, we have implementation roadmap. Next slide, please. Now, the concept of the definition of citizen data, many people ask us. Here, we do talk about citizen data are from initiatives where citizens are engaged at various stages of the data value chain. Here, 2 things. Engagement. We want citizens to be sufficient and meaningfully engaged in the data value chain, and if it's possible, from the beginning to the end. If that's not possible, and we emphasize a lot on the design stage at the very, very beginning, to have citizens be part of the design phase and data collection. Next slide, please. I think I talked about this. So there are various objectives, and we have this objective listed in the framework also partly because we will really advance to data quality discussion, and data quality standard will vary per the objectives. I think that was one of the reasons that we have objectives covered by citizen data, whether it's the data are collected to inform legal changes or policy changes or for advocacy purposes, and the data quality standard had to vary per the fitness, we call it fitness for purpose. It has to vary by the ultimate objective. Next slide. So this is the 13 principles. In the earlier slide, but I can stay on this slide. We borrowed, as I mentioned, we borrowed a lot from the citizen science community on the principles, and of course the fundamental principle for official statistics and the human rights approach to data. I think there was a publication from OHCHR. There are something that's very unique to citizen data if we compare the fundamental principle for official statistics and principle of citizen data. For example, we put a lot of emphasis on participation and inclusion. That's number 3. Informed consent came out very explicitly here, but not implicit in official statistics fundamental principles. Self-definition and self-identification it's very unique to this, and data sovereignty, of course. And we also talk about ethical and safe production and use, which is very a lot more explicit under this set of principles. Next slide, please. We have a section on the role of an NSO. This was, I think, the newly added section for the latest version. And then NSOs are very much interested, and then the national statistical offices, then they endorse the framework, but they're also very much interested to see what their role is in the citizen data space, other than watching it and then being part of it. What does it mean? So NSOs are very familiar or have a lot of expertise on data and quality standards, so they can definitely work together to come up with data quality standards, and they can build capacities. And it's also, citizen data can also be a gateway for them to foster partnership with non-state institutions, civil society organizations. And they should be responsible for raising awareness of citizen data's value and advocating for its integration into official statistics. And we also talk a lot about CSOs and NSOs supporting each other because civil society organizations are also having a lot of experience, for example, on qualitative data, and then they can really work together with an NSO. Next slide. So this is our implementation roadmap. Mobilize resources and partnership. We are very much interested in this to see how we can support civil society organizations in terms of bringing more partners, but also financially. Of course, given the current situation with funding, and we are really brainstorming with the CSOs and community to see how we can support them in fundraising, what are their challenges, and we're also keen to learn their coping strategies on financing. Of course, on advocating for citizen data, we're doing a lot of advocacy work and bringing different partners together, fostering knowledge exchange. We are also working on a set of knowledge products and tools. For example, on data quality guides, we got so many questions from community and CSOs asking for guidance, and the national statistical offices were also very much interested in that. How about meaningful engagement? What does it mean? How can we do that? So that's another question. So we do have a set of guidance that's coming up this year and next year. And we've also done an assessment with civil society organizations on their needs, capacity building needs, and how can we support them. So we're there to support countries. We do work with a number of countries. And then we also support countries if they're interested in building partnership within institutional, like established formal institutional partners within the country. Next slide, please. Can we maybe skip this one? Thank you. I don't think we need to. Okay, so just a couple words about the collaborative. So all this work would not be possible without the collaborative on citizen data. I have the 10 committee members of the collaborative on the slide. You can see their logos. And this is really just a platform for everyone to work together to support the implementation of the framework, to share knowledge and foster collaborations, mobilization of relevant stakeholders, and really to advocate for this work and great work happening in countries and communities, in citizen science communities as well. We're of course there to identify any conceptual methodological gap, inform further guidance that needs to be developed. Next slide. Yes, if you have any questions, email. We also have a QR code for the website. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hao-Yi. You're getting a round of applause in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to move on to Maryam.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carolynne, for organizing and moderating this session. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I'm joining you all virtually from New York, and I'm with the UN Sustainable Development Solutions. I lead a data program called SDGs Today. If we could go to the next slide, please. This program was launched in 2020 by Professor Jeffrey Sachs with the aim to advance the production and use of non-traditional data for the SDGs. So we work with a lot of different innovative teams, partners that are using satellite imagery, social media data, and citizen science, among other innovative methodologies and data sources to support sustainable development more broadly, but also solutions that can contribute to the SDGs. So I thought what I would do is just run through a couple of different examples that we have collaborated on, just to showcase and highlight what different citizen science, or I know a lot of different terms are used interchangeably, citizen-generated data or citizen data is used, and what that really looks like in practice. And Howie, in the definition that she highlighted, also mentioned kind of, citizens get engaged in different stages of that data value chain. And so I hope some of these examples just highlight the different ways that citizens can get involved and how their contributions make a real impact. Next slide, please. Okay, so this first example is a work that is led by wonderful colleagues in Ghana. It's the Smart Nature Freak Youth Volunteers Foundation, where they work with local schools, community members, and students to organize beach cleanups. So collect marine litter, categorize them, input the data into a platform, and keep track of all of the various beach cleanup events and activities that they organize. But they've also developed a very robust methodology and educational package where they do train a lot of students and community members before they get involved in these activities. And so we teamed up with them and supported some of the training sessions, the beach cleanups, and helped visualize and curate some of that data into a story map that we've presented. But beyond that collaboration, this data has, in collaboration with other civil society organizations in Ghana, but was also incorporated into different workflows that the Ghana Statistical Services, the Environmental Protection Agency was involved in, and ultimately led to discussions that then led to the development of a methodology that was basically developed to incorporate citizen science data into SDG reporting for specifically SDG 14.1.1b. For those who might be familiar with the SDG indicators. Every year, a number of countries volunteer to present their progress on the SDGs at the high-level political forum here in New York. And so I believe the first time that Ghana actually utilized citizen science data for their SDG reporting, I believe it was back in 2019. But I know my colleague Dilek has been involved in this process and will probably go through this work in more detail, but wanted to highlight one example where citizen science data is being utilized for official SDG reporting across some countries. Next slide. Please, thank you. This is an initiative that is led by NOAA's National Centers for Environmental Information. This is a data set on marine microplastics. So I won't go into too much detail in terms of the methodology. They've published a paper that goes into that in a lot of detail. But they do combine different data sources to produce this data set that you see here. One of the data sources or methods that is utilized is citizen science. They either get approached by different initiatives that do work that could support this, the development of this data set, or if they find data that's published or initiatives that can support this. I believe they have a process of evaluating the work that they do, the data that they collect, and then decide whether or not that gets plugged into this data set. So we don't contribute to the production of the data set, but we have developed this dashboard just to make access and use of this data a little bit more dynamic and easier to integrate into different research projects. So this data set has contributed to many research initiatives, some of which are published in their own publication, but we've had a lot of, we work with a lot of different universities and students that have utilized this data set for research. So just wanted to highlight one example or one topic where this data set was utilized for a research initiative, and that was on the impacts of climate-induced marine heat waves and microplastic pollution in the Mediterranean. And this was research that was led by a youth delegate that was then presented at various high-level events as well. If we could move on to the next, thank you. This is another example also. I know I'm highlighting a lot of SDG 14 related examples, but I think this is the last one. This is focused on mapping plastic waste dump sites. So the engagement of citizens in this project was at a different stage and a little bit different. So this was a collaboration with Earthrise Media, where there was a team that developed an algorithm that detected plastic waste dump sites using satellite imagery. And so what we did is we brought together a group of youth and students who then kind of went through, reviewed what the algorithm had detected and validated based on, again, there was a little bit of a training and educational component in terms of how you can identify a plastic waste dump site, what characteristics it has. So using that knowledge, kind of validating the data. And for those who might be in close proximity to one, we also developed a survey where they could collect additional information and present that to the team involved. This was part of an effort thinking about how we can create more regional and global data sets on this topic. And so we had students, I think, they reviewed thousands of data points, and then we did have a webinar where we had some of the students come and present some of their findings, share their experience being part of that process in terms of providing their input into validating data and collecting data on site as well. Thank you. This is another project more related to SDG 4 on quality education. We collaborated with a wonderful organization called TINT Follow Taxes in Nigeria. They focus on citizen engagement mechanisms that can improve service delivery. So they work very closely with different state education boards, and due to the lack of timely and open data on schools and other data related to teacher to student ratio, textbooks available, facilities and services that are available on site, a distance to schools, obstacles in terms of kind of physical obstacles and in terms of accessing schools. Those were all information that they collected and mapped and created a dashboard to then inform the research that they were doing with their state education boards to inform policies and decisions that could support not only enhancing the educational experience of the students, but in the long term identifying perhaps where resources need to be invested for new schools so that all student or school age populations have adequate access to schooling. So that's another example of different communities coming together to map that data and make that available. Not all of the data was published for privacy and security reasons, but it did inform a lot of the research and policy recommendations that they were working on with their partners. Great, thank you. I think this is the last example that I wanted to highlight. So we run an annual program called the Eco Ambassadors Solutions Lab. We run this in collaboration with our partners at the Center for Sustainable Development at Columbia University. It is a free virtual program for high school students where we combine technical training, digital storytelling, lessons on the SDGs, and other kind of skill-based sessions over the course of 6 to 8 weeks. And what we ask students to do at the end of the program is to utilize the knowledge and the skills that they have learned throughout the program to develop a solution for a sustainability challenge that they face in their communities. And so a lot of times when students don't find the data that they need for the work that they're doing and the solutions that they're developing, we encourage them to collect their own data and to present that in their final project or their final data stories, as we call them. And so I just wanted to highlight one example of a student from New Jersey, Ritika Rawat, who did such a wonderful job in what she was trying to do was to find out how runoff impacts her local waterways. And so she did a very comprehensive study collecting water samples from various sites, using soil moisture sensors, did a very comprehensive analysis of all the data that she collected, and then used that data to then help her better understand what solution she could develop, in her own backyard to address the issue. So what she did is she then developed a low-cost autonomous infiltration robot to increase soil infiltration and reduce run. And so in this image, you can see her working on that, and it was something that, a solution that she implemented, but also encouraged a lot of her neighbors and community members to implement as well. So that's another example of youth kind of collecting data where they can't find other sources to inform action, a sustainable action. Do I have any? Okay, no. So all of the data sets and case studies that I highlighted are available on our website. So you can go through them and read through all of them in more detail. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to provide more information. Thank you, Carolynne.
Thank you, Maryam. Appreciate you. All right, everyone. So now we're going to go on to a series of regional reports. We're going to be starting with Latin America and the Caribbean. Amanda, if you're online.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hello, I'm here in representation also of a team of Karen and me that we have been developing the report for Latin America and the Caribbean and the contribution of citizen science projects in these regions for the SDGs. So I'm going to try to summarize in short time what we have been working on. For doing this mapping, we started with the baseline of the initiative map at the Inter-American Network of Participatory Science in 2020. They mapped around 500 initiatives or citizen science across Latin America and the Caribbean. And from them, we randomly select 106 participatory initiatives. And from them and from information that these initiatives share on their reports, we map whether were their contributions directly or indirectly to indicators of the SDGs. Additionally, we also did semi-structured interviews with 4 representatives of initiatives from Chile, Argentina, from Brazil, and also some of them that have a regional impact. We acknowledge that it's not we don't get information from all the countries, but we get very important insightful Latin America and what is the information done in collaboration between scientists and communities. Next one, please. Thank you. So from the around 100 initiatives we analyzed, the SDGs that was more informed by them was the SDG Life in Land, and this also follows global trends over other studies that have been mapping citizen-generated data and how it's informing SDGs. Most of the initiatives in Latin America that cover these SDG indicators are, for example, wildlife monitoring or monitoring of a specific endangered species, also deforestation and forest fires monitoring. Also, the other 2 SDGs that were widely informed was the SDG 6 as the SDG 14, that both are related with aquatic resources. So this goes together usually because projects, first we noticed in the region that there was a lot of projects that were focused on working with the fishers communities, and also interested in understanding the status of aquatic resource And most of these projects, they include like monitoring of fishes, but also like assessing the data quality to have a broader perspective over the aquatic ecosystems. So these usually get informed together. Also, we get like other projects related with other SDGs. For example, we get projects that work with adolescents in the study of reproductive health, or also like gender violence, for example. And overall, we map, like the initiatives we map, they were informing 12 of the 17 SDGs. That is a lot if we consider that it's only a sample of what is getting informed. But we mapped that most of them are informing topics related with biodiversity and natural resources. Next one, please. Next one, please. Okay, the previous one. Okay, perfect. So in addition to these observations, we also make some specific we identify specific characteristics of the Latin American and the Caribbean initiatives on citizen science. So one thing that we find very interesting is that many of the initiatives that we map, they are primarily centered on targeting populations that are vulnerable or historically underrepresented groups, for example, rural, indigenous, and peasant communities. So there are projects that are open to anyone to participate, but less than, like more than 60% are especially targeting underrepresented communities. And this is particularly relevant if we consider that one of the main critiques over traditional sources of information for SDG indicators are usually criticized for not getting information from these underrepresented groups. So actually what we are finding in the region, there is a specific attention of producing information for and with these communities and about these communities too. So that was the first like characteristic that was really outstanding for us, specific from the Latin American analysis. The other one was that we find that projects were designed to address community information needs, like the priority from the initiative leaders were to address communities' information needs. So the project were designed to respond to the needs of the community instead of like producing information for specific SDG indicators. So they were community-based, and also many of them, 42% of the ones that we analyzed, were action-oriented. So they were not only focused on producing this information, but also seeing how this information was going to make a real world change in the real world. So that was an interesting observation we get, and this also impact on how the initiatives see the SDG framework. So they are informing SDG indicators, but they are considering SDG frameworks not in the design step of their initiatives, but after the design. So for the design, they center all the design what the community needs to know, wants to know, to address their challenges or their issues. And then when they get the initiatives, they are like, okay, this information is informing SDGs indicators in this and this way, and they usually do this connection for looking for funding, or also to escalate their initiatives to and get more visible from political actors. Next one, please. So from this general overview, really fast overview we get from Latin American and the Caribbean and the citizen generated data that is getting from this region, we get some recommendations related with SDG indicators and how we can articulate it from citizen science projects. So the first one, as I mentioned, is like aquatic resources are getting a lot of attention from initiatives, and new initiatives are getting in the region. But one of the main challenges is that there is a lot of information, historically information, and with a broader geographical range that are not getting informed any SDG indicators. For example, data on sharks, on whales, and sea turtles, for example, that are really common monitoring in the region, that don't inform any SDG indicators, because SDG indicators are only getting informed or only considering as an indicator information from commercially valuable fishes. So we can see also this analysis of citizen-generated data as a way to understand that there's a specific needs and a specific data that is being informed regionally, and maybe we can rethink about what are the SDG indicators that we are considering for the region, considering the available information that they are already gathering. Another thing that we find is that there was a lot of contextual data that was informing SDG indicators, and it's usually like not intentionally developed. And what I mean with this, for example, there are projects co-developed with farmers that they are centering understanding their crop management or the seed use in their agricultural practices. But in the context of these projects or these citizen science projects, they are also getting information about the education level of these farmers, the access to basic services, the women access to education. So this is contextual data that even if it's not the target of the citizen science projects that are being developed, it's relevant information that are informing SDG indicators. And finally, as I mentioned, there's like in Latin America, most of the projects that we analyze are specific targeting community information needs. So it's important to think about that to get like to think globally, but also act locally, considering the specific approaches that each region is taking. So we also saw that there is like not so much awareness over the citizen science representative on the SDGs and SDG indicators specifically. So this could be an opportunity to also like see how we can articulate the work considering the global framework, but also the local needs of these communities that are participating. So I hope this gives you like a little bit of like context over Latin America and the Caribbean and what is the information that is generated by citizen science projects here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amanda. Thanks for sharing your insights. Now we're going to turn it over to Yaqian.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce the current situation is happening for citizen science with SDGs in Asia. And like many colleagues mentioned before, citizen science represents significant complementary data resources for monitoring SDGs. But as everyone knows, like in Asia, you can see from this map, since most countries are still in the middle and low income development stage, so we still got big problems about the policy systems is still dominated by economic growth. So the participatory governance system is not yet mature. And the relevance and digital technologies limit the participation of the poor, especially for the marginalized groups in citizen science. So this is all factors taken together have led a limited number of citizen science projects in Asia regions. Although, like the Asia regions, we got a large populations of the people in all of the world. But so right now to date, there is no Asia countries has formulated embedded citizen science data in the official SDG indicator reporting. So that means there is no government levels. They recognize the importance. They have embedded the citizen science data into the official data monitoring for SDGs. But there are two countries are highlighted, especially for Bangladesh and Kyrgyzstan, has now acknowledged at the government level that this data has valid resources from national SDG monitoring. Although they're still at the stage of negotiations, but there are high promise for them to embed in the citizen science into the official data. Thank you. Next slide. So you can see from these mappings, there are many projects that have been collected in Asia, especially in China. We got the highest the numbers of the citizen science projects is 48, and the following by India. But there is largely the other numbers of citizen science projects in Asia is still we need to improve more. So right now, all of my data collected is in total there are at least 83 projects in Asia was happening, and especially like East Asia, accounting for China, accounts most of the citizen science projects. And based on my analysis, you can see that there are 5 topics of the city and science of the SDG topics right now can city and science make contributions, including SDG 6. SDG is especially about water qualities, and SDG 3 is about climate actions, and SDG 11 is about urban planning, and SDG 3 is about the health, SDG 13 is about climate action, and SDG 16 is building the government's accountability mechanism. Next slide. Thank you. And this is a more detailed analysis at the topic level. And we can see right now there are 5 key topics. Analysis from the 83 city and science projects about. Actually, in Asia right now is for city and science data can make contributions for SDGs at indicator levels. So they're including about the community water quality monitoring. This is accounting the larger number of the projects in Asia, especially the outstanding projects is Freshwater Watch. And the second one is air populations, pollution data supplementary, and it's still happening in Japan. And the urban mapping infrastructure feedback is representative by OpenStreetMap, with linking to the SDG 11.1 and 1 and 11.3.1. And the fourth one is about the disaster early warning and community monitoring. This is especially happening in COVID, during the COVID period. And the Nepal is outstanding for this at this indicator levels. And the final one is about social accountability and governance transparencies. So the Malaysia is builds more during this the topic. Next slide. You know, although like the Asia, it looks like Asia, we still got many projects, but the challenges are still happening in these agents. And the first one is unclear institutional absorption paths. As we all know, like in Asia, so we have the large numbers of the low developing and developing countries. There were only a few developed countries. So we still need the government release more power for citizens to collect the data, especially to get more support from the government to embed the city and science data for get the real use. And the second one is, although the Copenhagen's the framework has been released, but we haven't got any interpretations at the country level. And especially for Asia, we cover different types of the languages and the cultures as well. So we still need lack of the established data standardized to integrate, to discuss about how to integrate the city and science into the official SDGs data monitoring. And the third one is digital technologies we still need to arising. Because in many low and in middle income countries participating in these city and science projects, we still need to, to think about how to train the marginalized groups, especially for the elderly peoples and for some disabled peoples, if they would like to join, how to we make the trainings for them and provided some tools and equipment needed for them to collect the data. And taking the China as an example, the proportions of the populations with basic scientific literacies is less than 15%. So that means like we still need more education powers to train the people to get more scientific literacies, to raise their awareness in environmental protections and let them got more motivations to build the data qualities and the skills for city and science monitoring. And the final one is a common issues happening in city and science. Any types of initiatives is about insufficient the funding and the project sustainability. So based on my observations and analysis, it could be found that the most Asia city and science projects are short-term international cooperation or scientific research pilots. So it lacks of institutional embedding and long-term funding mechanisms. So for example, the Marvia projects in India performs well in pilot phase, but it failed to operate normally due to the lack of the government adoptions reflecting the interruptions of the path from scientific research to policy transformations. But it's not only the issues happening in these countries, it's happening in many countries as well. Next slide. Thank you. Sorry, can we go back to the last slide, the previous slide? Yeah, so yeah, this one, thank you. I think the main things happening here is about the country's accountabilities. You can see the right two figures. There are only 9 countries has been recognized in Asia is for developed countries. So they got more powers, and the government is more inclusive to integrate the citizen science data. But the larger remaining of these the countries is from the least developed economics and developing economics. So that is also why the Asia is happening so slow, like in citizen science data. And many of them, the projects are just short-term projects. Next slide. Thank you. And the final advices for me, and based on my experience and also the data evidence, we can see that there got the big potential, like in Asia, for making more valuable citizen science data for SDGs. Not only because, as I mentioned, as we got large groups of people, but also they indeed need to embed citizen science data for their SDG monitoring. You can see from this figure, there is only 4 countries rankings of the SDGs, the countries, the performance before 50. And the rest of the Asia countries are ranking after the 50 in the total all over the world of the SDGs rankings. So they indeed need to thinking carefully how to embed the citizen science power for the official SDGs monitoring. So we got 3 recommendations. The first, we definitely need to standardize our data collections and get more certifications to teach people how to collect the data. And the second is, although some AI technologies already advanced in Asia, especially like the DeepSeek or the other kind of technologies, but how to embed the AI technologies into the official citizen science initiatives, this is still a big challenge happening in citizen science research areas. And the third one is we need more collaborative opportunities as well. Is like it's not because like we mentioned there are several projects already make contributions in SDG 16. It's because the Asia has been divided into 4 regions. We need the inclusive participation platforms to build the regional citizen science support networks, especially for some schools or local governments, to provide some standardized and especially for some training, the protocols to empower the marginal groups to sustain the long-term engagement. And this is also can help us, especially when you're doing some regional collaborations. It can also tackling some cultural challenges as well. So this is all the current the findings happening in Asia. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so now I'm going to cover just 2 slides for Oceania, so coming closer to this side of the world. A lot of the projects in the region have an environmental focus, so there's a really significant focus on marine-related projects, which makes sense. There's definitely a lot of ocean-related and island-related connections. And many of these focus on potential negative impacts on humans and the environment. So many of the projects will be tracking pollution sources or tracking changes with climate change over time, erosion or flooding or those kind of factors. So there's a really strong, I'd say, climate change related focus also. But however, there's also a number of common issues in the region related to the ethical management of data. So I think this links really well with a number of other regions that are working with indigenous data. So talking about conversations with data sovereignty, I think, is really critical. And at the international level, when we're working with communities, having ownership of that data and having decisions around how that data is used can be really important. And that's part of this framing about aiming more towards some of the care principles and ensuring that that data is then also beneficial for the communities. So the ownership and the usage of that data is critical to consider for the region. These are some of the key areas and in the SDGs and some examples of projects in the region. I mentioned a few of these already related to climate action, particularly around some of the Rising Nation initiatives. And there's also a lot of work around hazards. So things like reporting earthquakes in where I live in New Zealand. This is a part that many people play a role in. Sometimes we have 60,000 reports in 15 minutes on how people felt earthquakes. And so these can be really crucial data sets to then feed into alert systems and scientific information around hazards. There's a significant amount of work around like marine pollution, and some of them that actually started locally and are now actually spread more globally, which is really amazing. And yeah, a lot of also work around life on land, restoration. Pest is a big topic, so looking at invasive species and how they've influenced the environment. So yeah, these are some of the core sort of areas for Oceania. And maybe there'll be some that you might be able to participate in while you're here too. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to our final regional report for today. So this is on Africa. Adenike? Are you online?
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody. My name is Oluwatimilehin Shonowo, and I'm a doctoral researcher at the University of Glasgow, and I happen to be the secretary of the CODATA-WDS Task Group on citizen-generated data for the SDGs. And coming on to the African regional report is divided into two divisions, actually. The first, which started in 2023, and what you're seeing on the screen right now is a result of the project that we had initially done 2 years ago, of which is the continuity is going to be discussed by the next speaker. In 2023, what we did was to, first of all, we explored the contributions of citizen science projects originating in Africa for two sustainable development goals, namely SDG 6 for water, health, water sanitation and hygiene, as well as SDG 11, which is for sustainable cities and communities. And this is because they are particularly important to the millions of low and middle income residents living in Africa. And the project survey spanned the West, the East, Southern, and Central Africa, with notable contributions from countries like Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. And it highlighted the potential of citizen science to provide high-resolution, participatory data to inform decision-making and improve development outcomes. And we did this because it was noted that while citizen science is well documented in the global north, there is sparse information on its application in Africa, despite its potential to address local challenges and contribute to SDG monitoring. The aim of this study initially was to map the landscape of citizen science projects in Africa and assess their contributions to SDG 6 and 11. It sought to demonstrate the potential of citizen science as a data that is fit for use, equitable, and inclusive. And it also aimed to fill knowledge gaps about citizen science projects in Africa and provide recommendations for integrating citizen-generated data into official SDG reporting. For the methodology, we imbibed a mixed method approach that involved online surveys, interviews, expert conference panels, and a desk review, which allowed us to be able to analyze a total of 53 citizen science projects focusing on water, sanitation, and urban planning. At this stage, I really need to say a big thank you to the CODATA network, because at the point, we struggled to get data with respect to citizen science projects involved in Africa. And big thank you to the CODATA network, because they all rally around and started giving us their contacts, of which we were able to reach out to, and we got results. Initially, our target was to get access to about 102 citizen science projects, of which we reached out to, but got a 52% response rate, resulting with 53 responses in English as well as in French. And we also did interviews and panel discussions, as 2 expert panels were convened as the international conferences to gather insights from citizen science practitioners, researchers, and policymakers. And the key findings from this particular study, of which the paper is showing in front of you right now, and you can also read through, is the fact that, number one, for the geographic representation, the study surveyed 53 CS projects, like I mentioned earlier, and most were located in the West, East, and Southern Africa. North Africa was grossly underrepresented. And the benefits included the fact that CS projects aim to educate the public, advance research, and inform policies. However, few explicitly focused on SDG indicator reporting. For the tools and methods used, it was reported from the projects we got so far that smartphones and data visualization were the most commonly used tools. Direct observation was the most popular data collection method. And for training, field-based training was the most common approach for volunteers. And for funding, many projects relied on in-kind institutional support or had no funding, which grossly limited their sustainability. And with respect to the challenges, key barriers, we found out that the key barriers to integrating citizen-generated data into national statistical offices included institutional bureaucracy, lack of data validation, and limited government uptake. When we talk about the limitation and gaps, the number one limitation that we encountered was regional bias. The study overrepresented projects in Anglophone Africa with limited data from Francophone and North Africa. Also, is with respect to the limited uptake, as few citizen science projects aligned their data collection with SDG indicators, reducing their utility for official reporting. Furthermore, many projects lack sustainable funding, affecting their long-term impact. And finally, limited internet connectivity and access to digital tools in that data collection in some regions. This is briefly the summary of the project we conducted, the study we conducted in 2023, and we have a paper published right here, of which you can read to get more insights about. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Anike. So now I'll pass it on to Kehinde.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good early morning. It's 2 a.m. in Lagos, Nigeria. Sorry, I'm unable to turn on my video because I just flew from South America to Nigeria 22 hours. So I'm literally jet lagged and my face is really swollen. But I'm happy to be here, to be able to make this presentation. Thanks, Adinike. While the earlier work mapped existing citizen science projects, across Africa around SDG 11, our study takes, a step further. We engage directly with citizen science initiatives, through personal interviews, surveys, personal interview surveys to understand how these projects actually work, the SDGs they contribute to, and the challenges they face in data collection, management, sharing, collaboration with NSOs and other official bodies, accuracy and the reliability of the data collected by these volunteers. So in a sense, we move from just mapping the landscape to actually talking to the actors themselves. My name is Kehinde Baruwa. I'm presenting alongside with Professor Peter Elias, for this, project. So our study actually explores, how citizen science initiatives in Africa, are contributing to SDG monitoring and planning, bridging community-generated data with official reporting systems. And the insights here come from the insights here actually come from personal interviews and survey responses from 5, African countries, as we can see: Kenya, Nigeria, Cameroon, South Africa, and Tanzania. And they cover about 5, different SDGs, focusing on gender equality, clean water, sustainable cities, climate action, and life on land. And the focus populations from these projects, are primarily youth, women, informal urban communities, and rural households. These are groups that are usually underrepresented in traditional data systems, but central to achieving equitable progress on the SDGs. And the data, some of this data that have been collected are actually now used, for advocacy, planning, community profiling, and collaboration with national statistical offices. We can go to the next slide. So moving on, to some of these projects, that emerged from our personal interviews and surveys. This slide highlights a few examples of how citizen science is being applied across different SDGs in Africa. So I'll just talk, briefly about some of, the projects. For the SDG 11, there are 2 projects, I would like to speak about. The first one is Nigeria Slum, Informal Settlement Federation in Nigeria. This is a community-driven initiative, and what they do is they profile slum communities in Lagos and Port Harcourt. Residents, the communities themselves, map, their boundaries, house numbering, and asset data using OpenStreetMaps and drones. This data has actually been used, for slum upgrading efforts, and has also led to tangible changes in, even for example, installation of solar street lights, boreholes, as a result of, the community profiling that they've done. And they've worked with with local, government bodies, here in Africa. The second one is Nairobi River Data Project. Volunteers here actually collect nitrate and phosphate data from the Nairobi River, to identify pollution sources from both industries and informal settlements, from upstream to the downstream. And the data is actually mapped using GPS and are shared with environmental agencies to support river restoration. Actually, this project has closely now worked with, NSOs in collaboration. Under the SDG 6, we have projects such as Donate Water, and Wadaba in Cameroon. Donate Water is in Nigeria, Wadaba is in Cameroon, and they engage volunteers to map and monitor local water sources, helping to address gaps in water access and quality. For example, the Donate Water actually mobilized volunteers to map and collect data on water sources in rural and peri-urban areas of Nigeria using a tech-based app with geolocation. Volunteers actually gather real-time data on water availability and quality. And the goal for this project is actually to improve water access and guide local interventions. And actually, this project is already endorsed, by the World Bank at the moment. And for the SDG 5, there's a project in Nigeria. It's called the Life Equity Project in Nigeria. Projects, right? They collect data on adolescents' access, to HIV testing and sexual health services. Volunteers also use GPS and photos to authenticate data, and this data collected is validated, through community meetings, and they are actually compared with national statistics. This actually project, illustrates how citizen science can address social and health inequalities through data-driven advocacy. As for the SDG 13, there's a project, called the Maguzi Ya Warifu initiative in Tanzania, and this empowers communities to use digital tools for climate adaptation and local governance. And for the SDG 15, which is Life on Land, there's a project in Kenya called the Marsabit Forest Youth, led reforestation and biodiversity. They track, they track, biodiversity, using through youth-driven citizen science. And the truth is, across this project, citizens generated data are filling critical information gaps and I'm bringing local voices into evidence that was once exclusive to formal institutions, yet they all share similar needs, data validation support, better institutional links and sustainable funding to keep citizen participation alive. Conclusion and recommendations. Next slide, please.
I don't think we have a next slide for that.
Okay, I can just talk about the conclusion, from my head here. So, in conclusion, the findings that we've gotten from this project so far supports, Africa actually holds a strong potential, in supporting the SDG monitoring and local decision making, particularly around urban management, water governance, gender equity, and climate resilience. However, while this progress is evident, there are still key gaps, around data validation, institutional collaboration, and sustained funding, which is also across, the other regions. So strengthening collaboration between communities, researchers, and civil society organizations, and national statistical offices is actually essential to improving the credibility, the visibility, and the uptake of this citizen-generated data. And based on the study that we've done so far, we propose like 4 main actions, moving forward. The first one will be to institutionalize citizen science, within national SDG frameworks to ensure policy recognition and long-term support, which is what I'm very proud about the Copenhagen framework. And the second one is to invest in data quality and validation mechanisms. This is to be able to enhance trust and compatibility, with official data. The third one is to build local capacity, and provide funding support to sustain engagement and scale impact. And finally, to be able to encourage cross-country collaboration and knowledge exchange. Because so much is happening in Africa, and it seems like some of these projects are working in silos. But what if we come together, be able to collaborate, and be able to, exchange knowledge, so that African networks can share lessons and harmonize approaches. Ultimately, the goal is to make citizen-generated data credible, inclusive, and sustainable, to the SDG reporting ecosystem. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that positive message. We appreciate that and your insights. So we just have a real brief closing, which is going to refer back to some prior work that was mentioned related to litter. And this is from Dilek's Fraisl's work that Maryam also mentioned earlier. So Adenike, did you want to say a few words on this project?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So once more, I'm going to be presenting on behalf of Dr. Dilek with respect to how citizen science is shaping progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. And one thing I'm just going to talk about is the paper that has been published titled "The Contribution of Citizen Science to SDG Monitoring and Reporting on Marine Plastics." And in that paper, Ghana was a case study that was really focused on, because Ghana right now has become the first country to integrate existing citizen science data on marine plastic litter into their official statistics, as well as SDG monitoring and reporting. And for the Ghana litter case study, it highlights the integration of citizen science data into SDG indicator 14.1.1b, reporting on plastic debris density. Ghana right now is leveraging data from local groups like Smart Nature Freaks and Plastic Punch. And the data collected during beach cleanups were validated and incorporated into Ghana's official statistics, contributing to its 2022 voluntary national review, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals global database. Then other countries like Sierra Leone and Colombia are also adopting this approach right now and have engaged in knowledge exchange workshops with Ghana aimed at replicating the model and the process. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So for anyone interested, the title of the paper is beneath, so you can actually check it and read it to know more about what is currently happening. Then another thing that I need to say is that this project was designed with SDG reporting in mind, as it followed a structured 3-phase methodology. The first of which was to understand the global SDG 14.1.1b methodology, which is to align it with international standards, rather, as well as finding and compiling existing citizen science data from platforms like Ocean Conservancy Tides database, also it's validated, integrated, and reported the data via collaboration with Ghana's Statistical Service and Environmental Protection Agency. This ensured the data met quality standards for official SDG reporting and demonstrated a replicable process for other countries. And the third phase is the fact that it ensured meaningful engagement and community benefits by providing awareness and education as citizen scientists gained knowledge about marine data and its impact, fostering behavioral change. It also helped influence policy because the data informed the data informed Ghana's integrated coastal and marine management policy, linking local efforts to national and global policy making. And it also helped with capacity building as citizen science groups improved their methodologies and understood the value of fostering the value of their contributions to official statistics. And finally, is with respect to recognition, as volunteers' efforts were acknowledged, ensuring their contributions were valued and not exploited. And the Ghana case study demonstrates how citizen science can bridge local action and global SDG monitoring, benefiting both communities and policymakers. And finally, it also ensured that participants receive a share of the benefits from the research, such as a form of ownership of intellectual property through a certificate or payments. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that for Dilek, our colleague. So finally, just a quick note, these are some of the future directions of the group. We're looking at ways to better integrate with the World Fair Plus program from CODATA and the CDIF framework, and how this integrates with the CARE principles and the Copenhagen framework, and actually have policy going forward on how to kind of integrate and use these different frameworks together when you're going about using citizen data for the SDGs. And as part of this work, we're hoping to be able to demonstrate that through a case study on air quality with the Citizen Science Global Partnership of integrating data across the world on air quality that's been shared. And then to really continue to highlight some of these examples and insights. I think there's so much that we can learn as a global community by sharing best practices and learnings from each other, and ensuring that we're following ethical principles and that the data that we use is something that's used for good and positive impact. So I hope you've learned some about some of the work that's happening around the world. Thank you so much for all my colleagues who are online in many different time zones for joining in. I really appreciate you staying up late or getting up early and everything else. So thank you all so much.